You won't believe the moment I realized Karen wasn't just an annoying busybody, she was a full-on menace. It happened on a quiet Sunday morning. I was sipping coffee on my porch, enjoying the kind of peace that only comes when the neighborhood kids are still asleep and the street is dead silent. Then I heard it. The low rumble of an engine, followed by the sickening crunch of branches snapping. I rushed to the edge of my lawn just in time to see her SUV rolling right over my hedge, again. Not swerving, not avoiding, deliberately driving straight through it as if it were nothing more than grass. That hedge wasn't just decoration. It marked the boundary of my property. I planted it myself 5 years ago, nurtured it, trimmed it, and cared for it. It was a symbol of privacy and a little barrier against the chaos of neighborhood life. But to Karen, our self-appointed queen, that hedge was some kind of insult. She claimed it obstructed the visual flow of the street, whatever that meant. And rather than filing a complaint or talking to me, she chose a much more aggressive route: destruction. The first time, I thought it was an accident. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Everyone can have a distracted moment. But then it happened again. And again. 3 times in 1 month. Every single time, she claimed it was an accident. Her favorite excuse: the hedge is in my blind spot. I tried reasoning. I tried compromise. I even contacted the HOA board. But whenever Karen wanted something, the board bent like a cheap lawn chair. And their collective advice: lower the hedge. Lower my hedge. Because someone can't steer properly in a straight line. After the 4th incident, rage simmered beneath the surface. I woke up early just to check the hedge every morning. I was on edge, no pun intended, waiting for the next attack. Then came the day that changed everything. I watched her from my window, in broad daylight, drive over my hedge yet again, casually reversing and heading home. She looked satisfied, victorious, like she had proven a point. That's when something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. If the HOA wouldn't stop her, and if talking to her only fueled her delusion of control, then it was time for me to take action. Not violent, not illegal, but a perfect, carefully planned trap. One she would never see coming. And when I was done, Karen would finally understand that bulldozing my property had consequences. The plan started with research. Not revenge fantasies, actual legal constraints. I wasn't about to risk a lawsuit or criminal charges. I combed through HOA regulations, city ordinances, and property rights laws. The more I read, the clearer it became: she was in the wrong. My hedge was entirely on my property. I was entitled to protect it. The HOA had no authority to demand I remove or shorten it. So instead of lowering the hedge, I strengthened it. I spoke with a landscaper friend, casually asking about reinforcement techniques. He mentioned something called a root barrier, dense, sturdy, and hidden beneath the soil. It's commonly used to prevent roots from spreading under driveways. A legitimate landscaping measure. Completely legal. That's when the trap took shape. I installed a reinforced retaining border beneath the hedge line. On the surface, the hedge looked the same: lush leaves and trimmed branches. But underground, steel-edged support, not spikes, not anything dangerous. Just a rock-solid physical boundary that no car should be driving over in the first place. If she respected property lines, nothing would happen. If she didn't, well, I already knew how that scenario tended to play out. The next part was the waiting. Days passed, then weeks. The hedge remained untouched. Part of me wondered whether Karen had grown bored or moved on to another target. But deep down, I knew her pride wouldn't let it go. She didn't want coexistence, she wanted dominance. The breaking point came during an HOA barbecue. She overheard neighbors complimenting my hedge, calling it classy and well-kept. The envy in her eyes was unmistakable. She sneered and muttered something about overgrown monstrosities. That night, I heard the engine. She didn't even hesitate. Her SUV surged forward, just like before. But this time, instead of smoothly crushing through branches, it met resistance. A violent jolt. A screech of metal. The engine stalled. The front bumper crumpled like paper. The airbags deployed. For a moment, everything was silent. Then came the shrieks, not of pain, but of outrage. She stumbled out, screaming that I had sabotaged her car. I stepped outside calmly, coffee mug in hand, and told her the truth. I had simply reinforced my hedge. Nothing more. The HOA rushed over. The police arrived. And suddenly, Karen wasn't the victim. She was the aggressor, caught destroying private property. But this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a shocking fallout. When the officers arrived, their expressions revealed everything. They had dealt with Karen before. The neighbors gathered, forming a semicircle on the sidewalk. Whispers hung in the air like humidity. I explained the situation calmly, while Karen ranted incoherently about sabotage and traps. One officer inspected the hedge, followed the property line, and nodded. My reinforcement was entirely on my side. Invisible unless you dug. Legal. Smart. He turned to her and asked why she was driving over my property in the first place. Her response: because it shouldn't be there. Not, it was an accident. Not, I lost control. A full confession wrapped in entitlement. The moment she realized it, her face paled. Insurance claims were filed. The officer issued her a citation for property damage and reckless driving. The HOA, suddenly desperate to save face, tried to distance themselves. Some members even approached me, offering apologies. Not because they respected me, but because they feared potential legal repercussions. Karen's SUV had taken significant damage. The front axle was bent. Tires shredded. Radiator cracked. The repair bill was staggering. For the first time since this war started, she didn't look victorious. She looked small. But this story isn't just about damage or consequences. It's about the shift that happened after. Neighbors who once avoided conflict began speaking up. They recounted their own run-ins with Karen. One family had been harassed over mailbox paint color. Another received warnings for leaving recycling bins visible for too long. The HOA board admitted, quietly, that Karen pressured them into enforcing her petty rules. She wasn't authority. She was manipulation disguised as leadership. My trap became the catalyst. The board revoked her committee privileges. She screamed, threatened, then tried sympathy. None worked. The community had witnessed too much. They saw her entitlement exposed. Then came the insurance adjuster's report, a beautifully damning document. It stated she intentionally drove off the roadway and onto private property. Which meant, the damage wasn't covered. She would pay out of pocket. Days later, she came to my house, not to apologize, but to demand I cover repairs. She argued I created a hazard. I simply handed her a printed copy of the property line survey. She ripped it, stomped off, and swore she'd make the HOA regret this. But the HOA already regretted ever giving her power. And soon, the final chapter would bring a resolution none of us expected, one that ensured she would never bully this neighborhood again. The HOA held an emergency meeting 2 weeks later. I attended out of curiosity, expecting arguments and finger-pointing. Instead, I witnessed something extraordinary: unity. Neighbors who had been silent for years finally spoke without fear. They shared stories of fines, threats, intimidation, and emotional stress. Karen sat in the corner, arms folded, glaring. But this time, no one backed down. The board voted, unanimously, to remove her from all positions and issue a formal reprimand. She erupted, threatening lawsuits. But she had no leverage. Her influence was gone. Without the board's support, her authority crumbled. Then came the final blow. When her insurance denied the claim, she attempted to sue me personally. But the court dismissed it immediately. The reinforcement was legal. The property damage was self-inflicted. The judge even questioned her mental fitness for decision-making, given her documented behavior. With legal avenues exhausted, she faced reality. Repair bills, HOA penalties, community disdain, and no control. Word spread beyond the neighborhood. Realtors learned the story. Potential buyers asked questions. Suddenly, Karen's reputation wasn't just inconvenient, it was a liability. And then, the most poetic ending arrived. She sold her house, packed up, and moved away. Her departure was quiet, not triumphant. The hedge still stands, supported, healthy, symbolic. The neighborhood changed, too. Without Karen's shadow looming, people started planting gardens, hosting gatherings, repainting shutters without fear. The HOA revised policies. Transparency replaced intimidation. Complaints were handled fairly. Respect replaced control. As for me, I never intended to start a revolution. I only wanted to protect my property. But sometimes, standing up once gives others courage to stand too. Looking back, the trap wasn't about revenge. It was accountability. A reminder that entitlement has limits, and destruction has consequences. If Karen had apologized, none of this would have happened. If she had simply talked instead of bulldozing, figuratively and literally, she could have been part of the community instead of its tyrant. In the end, the trap didn't just stop her car. It stopped her reign. And every time I sip coffee on my porch, looking over that hedge, I remember the moment peace returned, because I stopped being afraid to defend what was mine. The hedge stands. The neighborhood heals. And Karen, well, somewhere out there, she's learning that the world doesn't bow to her whims.